I'm Jim Setzer with Images by Design, and this is part 2 of my review of the FlashPoint XPLOR 600 strobe system. If you haven't checked out part 1, pause this video, click on the link below and check out that unboxing and first looks video and come right back here. I've been shooting the system now for about 6 months, mostly here in the studio, but I've also taken it out on location. I've got some thoughts on how it performs in both of those environments. The things I like about this system, the quirks, the things that don't seem to work quite right, no product's perfect, want to share all those thoughts. And I didn't get a chance to look at 2 accessories, really important accessories that I didn't have at the time of that first review. The first is the XP600 remote head. That's great for on location, gives you a lot more flexibility in studio as well. And the second is the AC adapter. Just came in the mail. I haven't even had a chance to unbox this thing yet, but this should give me all day shooting as well as a little bit faster recycle time. So we'll be testing that as well. Like I said, there are a few things that I don't like about the system. The first has to do with this modeling light, and as modeling lights go, it works fine. It's got 3 levels of brightness, which is great. But it's very susceptible to heat. It heats up and it shuts itself off. Now I normally set this modeling light at the brightest setting, and that's probably part of the reason it shuts off so often for me. But when it gets warm, it shuts itself down. It's LED based, so I don't understand why that is, but it takes a good 10 minutes until that thing cools off and comes back to life. On more than one session, I've had to swap it out for the other strobe in order to keep working. The other issue I have with the studio strobe has to do with this dog clutch on this tilt adjustment. It's all plastic. And it feels really cheap. So when you've got this up on stands and big modifiers on here, it doesn't really instill a lot of confidence. It's going to really hold that thing into place. And while the rest of the construction is really good, the battery pack snaps on solid. Everything else feels solid about this. That particular tilt right there is really cheap in my opinion. The system is manufactured by Godox in China, and the whole system is based on this X radio system. Adorama in the United States calls it R2. But it starts with this trigger, and the trigger itself is a really nice design. It's solid. It's got a jog dial, a backlit LCD display, a couple of buttons, a trigger up there. It's a little quirky at first to learn how to use these buttons as designed, but once you get used to it, it's okay. The thing I like about Godox is that they listen to their customers and they upgrade their firmware to add the features their customers are asking for. So for instance, people didn't like the way the controls worked, so they added an alternate mode of operations. They put an alternate setting in there, so if you're only using 3 groups instead of 5, you could limit it to 3, so you wouldn't have to go scrolling through as many things to adjust your 3 light groups instead of 5. They fixed that problem I was experiencing with the modeling light turning out when I hit the test button, and other things as well. But that leads to a couple of problems. One is now you have undocumented features that aren't in your glossy manual. So you've got to go to the Godox site when you download firmware. You have to find out what these new features are, maybe print it out and shove it into the part of your manual so you know what those settings are, because obviously there's no help system in here. You really have to read what those are about in the manual. Thing that got me when I upgraded to version 19 was, for some strange reason, they put an on-off configuration setting for the high-intensity LED laser-like autofocus assist lamp into the configuration, but they made the default off. So when you upgraded to version 19, all of a sudden now your modeling light or your autofocus assist switch didn't do anything. It seemed like your autofocus assist stopped working until you dig down into those undocumented configurations, and now there's this new configuration setting, I think it's 9, that you have to enable in the menu, and now your switch works. So that's a little bit strange. If you're a geeky person like me and you like to dig through that kind of stuff, that's great because, again, they're listening to their customers and they're upgrading their features and they're changing the product to better work with their customers' workflow. But if you're a non-technical photographer, that could get really frustrating. Let's take a look at this XP600 remote extension head. It basically turns this traditional studio strobe into more of a pack and head system where the head, the flash bulb, is separated from the capacitors and the circuitry by a cord. In this case, it's a 3 meter, about 9 foot long cable that allows you to separate those two out. Now, the part that plugs into where the lamp normally plugs uses Godox's proprietary mount. So if you have the Bowens version of this thing, you plug that in there and there's nothing holding that in place. So Adorama provides, and Godox now does sell, this little adapter ring that you put into the Bowens mount, and that adapts it down, and now it allows you to put the, be very careful, these are banana plugs, remote head in, cable in, and twist lock it into place. This is really important. Never use this without it because, like I said, those banana plugs are just brass plugs. They're not designed to take any kind of stress, and they will break off. So always use that ring to lock this in place. Hopefully you won't have any problems with it. In the studio, this is great because you can put the strobe body on one end of a boom and the head on the other, and it creates a natural balance. So you can put large modifiers up high in your studio without having to worry about all that weight up top. You can balance it properly. Still use sandbags, of course, and everything, but it allows you to work a lot more safely in the studio. And if you've got low ceilings, of course, this is much smaller than this big old body here, and so you'll be able to get your modifiers up a little bit higher. Out in the field, this works great because it comes with a bag that you can put the main body in, shoulder strap. Then you can put this on a monopod is what I use, or any other kind of stick. Have your lighting assistant hold this in hand with the modifiers on, beauty dish, Octabox, whatever you like to use on site. And this is a lot easier to control than this big heavy thing that you're hoisting up at eye level and trying to position and hold in place while you're trying to get that shot. So it's a very, very useful tool, great accessory. The downside, everything's got a downside, right? Is the fact that you're putting all that energy through this long cable, you're gonna lose about 2/3 of a stop of light. So keep that in consideration, which means your battery is not gonna last quite as long because you're gonna have to bring the power up to compensate for that loss in 2/3 of a stop of light along the way. Well, let's unbox this newest accessory, the one that just came in the mail, the AC adapter. So open up the box. Looks like a nice long cord. I'll have to measure that and let you know what that length is in the notes. A pack of desiccant, do not eat. And the AC power supply. So you simply unclip the battery, clip this in its place, plug that in, power it on, and go. Like I said, I should see some improved recycle times with this, being a 12-volt output to the capacitors instead of the 11.1 that you have in the battery packs. And you should be able to shoot all day. I just noticed it's got its own cooling fans in there, so it shouldn't by itself create additional heat. Hopefully it'll help keep that thing even cooler. So I'm anxious to give that a try. We'll test it out and see how it performs. For this test, I wanted to compare the recycle times between the stock lithium-ion battery and the optional AC adapter module. My hypothesis is because this is putting out 12 volts versus the 11.1 volts in the lithium-ion battery that you'll get a little bit better recycle times. So let's give that a try. I'm going to do a test fire. Do that again. That seems to be about 1/3 to 1/2 a second, something around those lines. Improved recycle times at full power. Now you might be saying, so what? What's 1/2 a second? And that really depends on your shooting style. If you're just shooting still portraits in your studio, 1/2 a second may not be a big deal to you. But if you shoot moving subjects in your studio, like dancers, you're going to need one, full power, and you're also going to want as fast a recycle time as possible, so because you just don't know when that next shot's going to come, and they do come fast and furious. So depending on your shooting style, that could be all the difference in the world.
Next, I wanted to evaluate the XPLOR 600's color consistency and brightness consistency. With the 50mm lens mounted to this camera, set at f8, ISO 100, I varied only the shutter speed. And I'm triggering the strobe in TTL mode. And I'm shooting at this autofocusing target in front of a white vinyl background. I took 3 consecutive shots at each shutter speed to compare. You notice that the color and the brightness within the same shutter speed is very consistent, and at lower speeds it's consistent even as you get a little bit faster. As you start to move into high-speed sync territory, however, you notice that these shots are particularly dark and there is a little bit of banding in there. This is not an uncommon problem. Most strobes struggle as they transition from single sync to high-speed sync modes. But with faster shutter speeds, the color consistency and the brightness consistency return, however, about a stop darker, and there's definitely a warm color cast here.
All in all, I have found these studio strobes to be an excellent value for the money. Feature-wise, performance, they hit way above their weight with much more expensive strobes like the ProPhoto B1, B2s, Einstein. I've got nothing but good things to say about the integration of all those features, those quirks and nuances. I just look at them as character of the system, and I can live with them. If others may not, but I think that's great. So this wraps up my review of the XPLOR 600 TTL Studio strobes. I've really kind of adopted this X radio, R2 radio system. I've recently gone out and bought a pair of these Zoom lithium-ion TTL strobes, speedlights, to complete my lighting system and put it all under one common ecosystem. I think that's going to be really interesting. Actually, I've been shooting with those for about a month, so I've got some ideas on the pros and cons of those things so far. Overall, I like them. Look forward to that review coming soon. And if you want to see that review, click the subscribe button. If you like what you heard here, click the like button. I'm Jim Setzer with Images by Design.